your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks so much for joining us for a look at what made headlines in Alberta this week. The race to replace Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley is well underway. All 5 leadership candidates were in Lethbridge on Thursday to square off in the first of 3 official debates across the province. As BCN's Naveen Day reports, the turnout was strong.
Contestants vying to lead the Alberta NDP took part in the party's first official debate of the leadership race, which was held at the Yates Memorial Theatre Thursday evening. Attendees were given an opportunity to hear from all the candidates in attendance and to see who they think can lead the party and bring them to government in 2027. First up was Kathleen Ganley. She says that affordability and caring about climate change can go hand in hand.
I think what we can do better than the UCP is make it clear to people that they don't have to make a choice between feeding their kids and making progress on climate change.
Sarah Hoffman's campaign comes with a bold promise to bring 1,000 doctors to the province and to bring back the days from when she was health minister. Make it boring again.
We didn't have scandals. Every major municipality in Alberta, you could get a family doctor. The good news is I was at the table and I struck those deals with doctors. And when we negotiated, because we had such a good relationship built on trust, they actually returned their retention bonuses.
Jody Callahoo Stonehouse fired shots at the Alberta energy regulator, holding them responsible for pollution on Alberta's reserves.
They discovered that cancer was at a higher rate of 30% downstream from the Alberta oil sands because we were not doing our job with the Alberta energy regulator.
Naheed Nenshi said the relationship between the Alberta NDP and its federal counterpart needs to be re-examined.
I think that a lot of the things that we've heard, for example, the conversation around the relationship between the federal and the provincial NDP. And this is something that has been brought up to me constantly by candidates, by campaigners, by others.
McGowan criticized Nenshi for his statements, saying that while he and Nenshi want to revolutionize the NDP, McGowan's plan is much more rooted in the party's interests.
He's talking about severing ties with the federal party. He's talking about changing the name. He's talking about changing the Constitution. It's true that I'm also a candidate who wants to revolutionize the party, but I actually want to revolutionize it by taking it back to its roots, by reestablishing it as a party that welcomes working people.
For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Researchers say patients from First Nations communities are more likely to leave Alberta emergency departments before receiving care than non-Indigenous patients. A new study says anti-Indigenous racism is part of the reason why. Researchers from the University of Alberta say provincial data from 2012 to 2017 shows nearly 7% of First Nations patients left emergency departments before being seen or receiving care. That compared to just under 4% of non-First Nations patients. And speaking of healthcare, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced a $15 million nurse practitioner model she says will give Albertans more access to the primary care they need. Smith says through the program, nurse practitioners will receive around 80% of the compensation provided to family physicians who provide primary care. Compensation will be based on the amount the patients and the number of patient care hours provided. She says it will enable nurse practitioners to practice patient care autonomously and operate their own practices. They will also be able to practice autonomously in existing primary care clinics.
Alberta hasn't had a direct funding model that allows nurse practitioners to work autonomously in a primary care environment, have their own practices until now. Through the new program, Alberta's government will compensate these highly trained, highly valued medical professionals to practice patient care and provide the health care they are qualified to do.
Alberta is stepping in to stop Calgary residents from being forced to pay hefty surcharges on their power bills. The province's utilities minister, Nathan Neudorf, introduced a bill that, if passed, would ban cities from using variable rates to calculate local access fees on power bills starting in the new year. Local access fees are charged to power companies in lieu of property taxes, but Calgary's fees rise and fall with the price of electricity, while other municipalities have a fixed rate or some other formula. As a result, Calgary took in $186 million more than expected last year from the fees, while residents had to pay about $240 on average, which is around 3 times more than Edmonton residents paid. On the other side of the break, the province is researching hydrogen fuel, and it's got a hefty price tag. We dig into that after the break. Welcome back. The Alberta government recently announced they're spending $57 million to research hydrogen to heat homes and fuel cars. Plus, the Premier defending her choice of doctor to chair the panel investigating data during the pandemic. It all gets broken down in my interview with Alberta legislative reporter for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, who begins with Alberta seeing an early start to the forest fire season.
Well, I think we knew that this was possibly going to be quite a bad fire season. As you mentioned, back in February, the government declared an early start to forest fire season. Usually that comes on March 1st. It came, I think, February 20th is when that was officially declared. So there's been sort of this preparation going on in the intervening months, getting ready for this fire season. And this week we have sort of seen, the actual start of it. Obviously, there have been fires that burned over the winter. There have been fires here and there around the province. But these, I think, are probably the first ones of 2024 that sort of prompted some people to leave their homes, other people to be on standby to leave their homes. And they're basically, one of them was up near Fort McMurray, one was on a First Nation near Cold Lake, and the third, as you mentioned, is in the Grimshaw sort of area in northwestern Alberta. So just goes to show we've got a bit of an early start on this. People are obviously on edge, and it's a good time, I think, to remind people to think about what they might need to do in terms of evacuation, whether that's getting pets ready to go, whether that's having water and food and things like that on standby. It's been very dry up here in Edmonton. I think it's been the same down in Lethbridge. It's going to be, in all probability, a fairly dry few months, and so people are going to need to be prepared, and the government has done its preparations. Of course, we won't know exactly what it is going to look like until the fires really get going and the government begins to respond.
Now, Tyler, the Alberta government is spending $57 million to research the viability of hydrogen for home heating and vehicle fuel. And several specific grants will boost funding for hydrogen-based infrastructure and fueling. And I guess as the province made its announcement, an American company called Air Products announced it would build hydrogen fuel stations along the QE2 highway. So, Tyler, what is the government spending? Why rather are they spending money on hydrogen?
Well, the government is pretty bullish on hydrogen. The idea is that this is a cleaner fuel than natural gas or oil, certainly cleaner than coal, and that this is, sort of the fuel of the future. And not only do they see that as a way to sort of meet some of their carbon reduction targets in the province and nationally, but also they see that as a potentially viable and profitable export product to places like Asia. So, it's been talked about for a long time, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm about it, and we're starting to see some of the money, get put down for these things. So, as one example, some of that money is going towards a rec facility in Sherwood Park, a hamlet just outside of Edmonton, that's going to be used to sort of heat and power that facility. It's, I think, a bit of a long road before we have hydrogen-fueled vehicles. Of course, you'll need the infrastructure for hydrogen fuel stations, but you'll also need vehicles that are ready to take hydrogen fuel and not your regular gasoline. So I think there's still a fair number of logistics to be sorted out here, but the government very much sees this as sort of the fuel of the future, and there's actually been some cooperation between the provincial government and the federal government on this file. So, it's not as contentious, perhaps, as some of the other policies that are going back and forth between the two governments. So, good chunk of money, certainly some research, some individual grant funding to try and get some of these, sort of new fancy projects or what have you off the ground. And of course, as you mentioned, a little bit of private investment here as well, which perhaps suggests that this is not just, the government trying to finance a sector of the economy or make something happen, and there is actually some private interest in this.
Moving on here, Premier Danielle Smith is defending her choice of the doctor to chair a panel investigating the use of data during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's this Dr. Gary Davidson, who is the former chief of emergency medical at the Red Deer Regional Hospital. And he has argued that the province exaggerated hospital data to justify its pandemic response. But Smith is standing by him. So what did she say, Tyler?
Well, she basically said that she wants to hear from a variety of opinions and a variety of people, and not just the people who were sort of the mainstream scientific consensus on this stuff. And that's of course been a bit of a theme with Danielle Smith since she entered the leadership race. She very much was sort of catapulted into the premier's office on this discontent over the way the government handled the pandemic. What is controversial about this, of course, is that you have an official government report that is being produced by someone who appears to have heterodox opinions on the way that the pandemic was managed. And so that's just raised some controversy with people wondering, whether or not this person's analysis of the data, ought to be given sort of the government stamp and things like that. It does, I think, suggest that when that report comes out, I think it's going to get quite a bit of scrutiny, perhaps more than it otherwise would have, just because of the personalities involved.
As mentioned at the top of the show, Alberta's official opposition party is looking for their next leader, and the race is on. After the break, we sit down one-on-one with two hopefuls vying for that top spot. Well, the Alberta NDP will be choosing their leader June 22nd, and there are 5 candidates racing to become Rachel Notley's successor. Earlier in our show, you heard a bit from each candidate, but we also want to hear from each one individually as well. Last week, we heard from one of the front runners in the race, Naheed Nenshi, and his vision to revolutionize the party. Continuing our series of interviews, we have Kathleen Ganley. She tells BCN's Hal Roberts what her first policy would be should her party form government in 2027 under her leadership.
My theory of the case, if you will, is that what we need to do to win the next election is to work incredibly hard talking to a lot of folks, because that's how you change hearts and minds, with one-on-one conversations, and to tell them a story about the economy, to talk to them about real concrete ideas on why our ideas are better on the economy. The UCP does a very good job of this, of telling people that if they give more money to their bosses, that they'll somehow get ahead. But that story isn't true. And so I think we need to take up a little more of that space with concrete ideas on how to cut people's costs and how to increase their wages.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other hot button issues you're hearing as you're door knocking. So what are you hearing right now? What's top of mind with people? Obviously, it is the economy, but what else are you hearing?
So most people's top concern right now, I would say, is cost of living, that and probably healthcare as well.
Now, you feel, Kathleen, that Albertans need some kind of tax relief. Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first policies I put out was to increase the personal income tax exemption to $26,000. So that means that people under the low income cutoff wouldn't pay provincial income tax at all. And that would sort of phase out at higher incomes. So at the end of the first bracket. So this would be a program very much targeted at giving relief to families, in who are struggling, and families who are in the middle class.
Now, you'd also like to see an increase in the minimum wage here in Alberta, in our province, which I believe is $15 an hour, but for federal workers, it's $17.30. How much of an increase are we talking about?
So if I were premier right now, I would put it up to $16 immediately, $17 next year, and then index it to inflation. In the last 5 years, inflation has gone up 18%. Minimum wage workers, they haven't had a raise of even a dime.
What about the impact, though, on small business owners? That's quite a hit. I mean, $1 an hour, each of the next 2 or 3 years. Have you talked to a lot of business owners? Could they sustain that?
Yeah, so I think that many small business owners already recognize that what turns the local economy more is giving people money to spend in the local economy. And when you give more to those who have less, they have more to spend in that local economy. It's actually helpful to small business. But I think in addition to that, we have started rolling out our offer to small businesses. And one of the first things we've included is, basically temporary no interest loans to cover unpaid accounts receivable. A lot of the problems that we're hearing from small business owners are about sort of cash flow, right? Especially when a larger company has failed to pay their accounts. So we are, trying to help small businesses out with that. So we make sure that we have a robust economy.
Now, some people are calling for the Alberta NDP to move a little bit more towards the political center. Now, with that in mind, what are your thoughts on someone like Naheed Nenshi being part of this race and conversation? Do you have any concerns about maybe a change in the direction for the party?
So I think having Naheed in this race is incredibly exciting. I think it'll bring a lot of new voices in. Obviously, I don't think he's the right person to lead the party. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. But I don't think that it necessarily requires a shift to center. I think it requires a shift in our focus. So in the last election, I think everyone whose top issue is healthcare and education probably voted with us, right? Because we had really strong plans on that and were trusted on it. I think that for a lot of people, their top issue is, how do I pay my mortgage? How do I afford my groceries? And we didn't speak to that particularly well. So I think what we do better next time is not necessarily to shift right, because I think there is a perspective on the economy that is more progressive. And that is the perspective where we give more to those in the middle and those at the bottom to help keep the economy going. Um, and I think that that is the right story. So I don't think that we have to necessarily shift right. I just think we have to talk about the issues that are top of mind for people.
So, Kathleen, any final thoughts on why party members should vote for you?
Because I want to build a world where everyone has a chance to succeed. I want my daughter to have the same opportunities here that I have. And I think I have a concrete plan and policies to make sure that that's the world we build.
We need to take a short break, but when we return, we bring you another hopeful vying for that top dog position with the opposition party. Welcome back. Another one of the 5 candidates vying to replace Rachel Notley is Edmonton-Glenora MLA Sarah Hoffman. She says a big focus of her campaign is bringing in more doctors to our province, since so many Alberta families still do not have a family physician. Here's an excerpt from my full interview with her.
My whole life, people have said that women like me don't belong in politics. I'm sassy, I have a bigger body, and I have a really hard time pretending to be somebody that I'm not. But I think, just like they've said we don't deserve to win in Southern Alberta, we've proved them wrong, that there are lots of people who share our values right across this province. And I'm looking forward to proving them wrong in this leadership race too. I think it's important that we own our values and own who we are, and I think people like that and respond really well to it. So I've definitely got a track record of working hard and winning, and that's my plan for this leadership race as well.
Okay, and what are you hearing specifically from people in Lethbridge and Southern Alberta? Why, what are they most concerned with, Sarah?
Definitely, I've been going to Lethbridge for decades. We held a provincial council or convention there years ago. I remember it was the middle of winter and the roads were really awful. And at that time, it was a lot of the same things that people are talking to me about now. Healthcare is top of mind, especially in Lethbridge, where about half the people there don't have access to a family doctor right now. Expanding the other types of care is great, but there's no replacement for that relationship with a primary care doctor. A lot of women are having to drive down the highway to have babies. That's not okay either. So it is definitely one of the biggest issues that's raised with me. And then another big one, of course, being a university town, is the lack of support for post-secondaries. And now with Danielle Smith bringing in this bill, it's Bill 18, around wanting to stop there being outside investment from Alberta into things that she might not support, including federal funding. A lot of our university dollars come from the federal government, and we should be working to make it even a stronger partnership and to bring more money in instead of chasing it away. So those are some of the top issues, along with
Climate change is another huge one, and not everyone says climate, but people are talking about drought and wildfires, and especially in southern Alberta, the scarcity of water. And with the current government talking about mining on the eastern slopes, that's going to impact the headwaters and the watershed that serve all of us in this province.
Mm-hmm. And now, you mentioned this right off the hop there, healthcare, and you say that Alberta needs more hospitals, obviously. So how would you go about doing that, and where would the money come from for that?
Yeah, so when I was the Minister of Health, we committed to the Calgary Cancer Centre. The UCP didn't pull the plug on that. We also committed to a new hospital in South Edmonton. The UCP has pulled the plug on that, and to expanding Red Deer as sort of the first 3 projects, and they've definitely stalled out on Red Deer. We haven't seen the kind of progress that I expected in the last 5 years. We also know that we need to expand cardiac care in Lethbridge and other acute care services. And the great news is that there's a lot of potential to be able to expand that care. So one of the things that I want to do is grow the programs from the U of A and the U of C into U of C Med School into Lethbridge. And I will give a little bit of credit to the UCP here. They have started that work, but we need to scale it up and we need to do it quickly. When people have their practice and their residency in a community that's a positive experience, they're likely to stay there. So let's make sure we give them more opportunities to learn in Lethbridge and then be able to be those healthcare leaders that we so desperately need in Lethbridge.
Mm-hmm. Now, if Alberta does get more hospitals, Sarah, and you mentioned it right there, it stands to reason that we obviously need more physicians, more nurses. So what should be done to attract and retain these health professionals?
Number one, it starts with respect. And this is another thing that sets me aside from the other candidates. I've been the health minister, and I was the health minister when we had a great working relationship with healthcare providers. It was so good, in fact, with doctors that when we sat down to negotiate the last contract under the NDP, and we opened up the books and we were very honest about where we were at as a province, they returned their retention bonus because there wasn't a problem with retention in Alberta. We had more than enough doctors. Every major municipality, you could get a family doctor, and they trusted me to work with them to put that money back into making system improvements. So it needs to start with having a respectful relationship. And I will argue that the fastest way to do that is to bring back the person who is at the table as the health minister in the premier's chair. That, I think, would send a very strong message to healthcare providers about the kind of seriousness that Albertans take the healthcare that we all receive. And we need to bring more postgraduate opportunities here for them to use their expertise in the healthcare system, do some additional training to make sure that they meet the requirements of the various health colleges. But there are people who already live here, as well as many people who are studying internationally who would like to come back to Alberta. So let's find more opportunities for them to work in the healthcare system, show them respect, and make sure that all of us can have access to great healthcare.
Up next, to find out how the City of Lethbridge is trying to connect with the public for input on various municipal projects. Keep it right here. From bike paths to bridge walkways to how prepared our fire department is, you could call it a one-stop shop for collecting information and feedback. Close to 50 different City of Lethbridge projects were on display at NMAX Center Thursday evening from 25 different city departments during the biannual community conversations. The purpose is for the public to garner information, ask questions, and give their 2 cents about various departments and urban revitalization projects the city is undertaking.
This is one way, like we do these annually to bring all the projects together in one place. So you don't have to go to 6 different open houses throughout the year. You can come to one place and give your feedback on a whole bunch of things. I mean, being springtime, it's some of the hot topics really are cycling, we know, is a big one. We've got some downtown cycling lanes that are brand new this year, so people have lots of questions about that. I think the parks booths have been really busy as well. You know, people are thinking about getting out and on our pathways and in our parks, and so just looking at the new pathways and things that they have planned there.
We've been getting a lot of positive feedback about the bike lanes. There's of course a few people that disagree with them as well, so we've had a few of each side. It's been nice that some of the concerns that we're hearing about are some of the concerns that have been addressed already. So we have the snow clearing, which we've changed our operations in how the bike lanes get cleared, and we've also are still hearing about the accessibility issues.
So we're showing off some of our new UTV, our riverboat. We're trying to show the public kind of who we are, are, what we do. If we can recruit, that'd be great. The questions we're getting, a lot of it's just, what is this piece of equipment? What's that? We're getting questions about what are we doing to prep for the wildfire situations that's going around, which we do have wildland training that's happening, which is a new initiative here in Lethbridge. Over the last couple of years we've been doing that, so it's definitely getting better that way. We're much more prepared than we have been ever.
According to city officials, a feedback evaluation survey on the event was provided to participants. The city will collect the feedback and share it on their Get Involved website. Within the framework of celebrating Earth Day on Monday, officials with the City of Lethbridge say there will be a change to organic waste collections here in the city. It will now be collected each and every week. Since May of 2023, the city has collected almost 6 million kilograms of organic waste in the Green Cart program. James Nichols, collection manager with the City of Lethbridge, breaks down the numbers for us.
Since May 2023, we've collected almost 6 million kilograms of organic waste in the Green Cart program. That averages out to about 175 kilograms per household. That's all material, the majority of which would have ended up in the landfill, would have been buried. That's now been made in this facility behind us and in the piles you can see over here into high quality compost that can be sold and can be given away to residents. Looking behind me and seeing how much material is currently being processed and realizing that's only a very small fraction of what's been collected and put through this facility so far. So again, just seeing a few of those piles and realizing how much of a difference that makes and realizing all of that would have ended up in the landfill and buried in a pile, it's a really big, really significant impact that residents have made.
Shepherd adds it's important for residents to continue putting their yard waste, including leaves and branches, into the bins. Lethbridge Police held an information session late Monday to talk to the community about its intelligence-led policing information. Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh says the ongoing effort by the LPS will help to reduce crime and create more security for those who live in our city. Stefan Contre, analytics manager for the Lethbridge Police, also discussed how this working method improves the quality of police service for everyone.
I want our citizens to know what the police is doing and how we are doing it, and to keep their city safe and promote a safer community for everyone. And a lot of times when the citizens don't know why the police is not in a certain location, why they're not doing certain things, I think it's up to us to actually explain our processes, how we are actually conducting our business, how are we actually prioritizing the efforts and who we are actually targeting and why we are targeting them.
This presentation was all about how the LPS uses data and analytics to make better data-driven decisions. So it's important to share that with the public so that they realize that when they do report stuff, we do take that into account in determining how we deploy resources, how we follow up on offenders, and how we can make the city safer. Anytime an incident occurs, we want to make sure that we collect that data and enter it into our records management system. That's a big database of crime that's been happening across Lethbridge. Now we use that data inside that database to make informed decisions on what we should do.
After the break, stay with us for an insightful conversation with the founder of Streets Alive Mission and how they need to move into a larger facility to meet the needs of more of our vulnerable population. Don't go away.